It's Wednesday, November 26th. I'm Adam Walsh, and this is The Signal. Today on the show, we are digging into a new biography called Dangerously Close to Contempt, The Restless Life of Roger Bill, journalism's unrepentant agitator. So buckle up for an immersive trip through local and international politics. Alex, you didn't write that title for broadcast. I was like thinking, am I going to make it through with this title? This is great.
The first part of the title I thought up very early in the process, and then the second part was the 11th hour, the last minute.
Oh.
Yeah, the dangerously close to contempt part is what I had from the outset.
Yeah, it's so good. I mean, it's referenced in the book with something very specific there. So Alex Bill is here. Roger Bill is here. How you doing?
I'm good. And you?
Good, good. Welcome back into the fold.
Pleasure to be here.
So I've been reading through this, and as we were just talking off air, I love having a look at local media, even though this is like some of the decades gone by. But to go and look at what's been here, some of the people who I grew up listening to, watching, and the times and the news events of those times over the decades. And so this thing goes from the Vietnam War on up through. It's really great. And folks, as you're listening today, if you if the spirit moves you, if you want to get in touch and call us, the lines are open. I'll put them out again later. But 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. You can text us, 709-327-8206, thesignal@cbc.ca, and we will give away this book, and it is fantastic. So tell us about the start of it. Where did it come from?
Yeah, I had been thinking about what was next in my career. I've been a journalist for a decade here, covering business, news, and politics, and anywhere from 3 to 10 short stories a week. And I wanted to explore something in greater depth and thought about a few different ideas that didn't quite take hold. And then I thought of my father's story, and I call him Roger, or Roger Bill in the book, but he's dad to me, and I couldn't say anything else here with him sitting next to me. I thought it was a really unique story. There isn't one like it in Newfoundland. Through him and his life, you get dozens of other stories, including, like you mentioned off the top, the experience of news media in the province from the 70s to today and how it's changed. Having a story that is unique that no one else can tell quite the same way is not a bad recipe for a book. And then I had to just convince him to do some interviews and be a part of it.
So Roger, your son comes to you, it's like, so Dad, I want to write a book about you. What was your first thought? And you're already making a face.
I've been working as a journalist around 50 years now. Yeah. And I've been successful in never using the word I in a story. I take that back. There was one time I had to say I in a story. But that's the kind of approach I took to my work. So my first thought was, oh, really? And then, do you think there's an audience for a story about these things? And I guess that's a question for a publisher. But my spouse, Deanne Fleet, also journalist, CBC.
Yes.
CBC viewers who know her. Yeah. Alex grew up in a house that journalists, so in the end, you can't say no, right?
Right. Yeah, and your mom, your wife Deanne, is someone who I grew up again watching on television. So when I was reading through the book and the names and remembering, as a kid, by the way, and I've said this before on the show, in my house, we weren't a CBC radio house. We were a CBC television house. So I knew all the TV crowd. It wasn't until later in life that I got into CBC radio. And I think I missed a fair bit growing up by not dipping in earlier. But I've revisited stuff, and it's so great.
Here you are today.
Here I am today. But good shout out to. I also got my start at VOCM in the local media ecosystem. And so, Alex, for you, when you look at the ecosystem, when we look around now, and we were talking about this, in the lead up to the show starting. What from talking to your dad and all the research you did, and just your own existence here with your own work, what do you see when you compare the differences from now to any point in the past of those decades? What's the big thing?
Everybody has less money.
Yeah.
And they, in different ways, struggle or find success in figuring out how to operate with less of it. Whether that's finding different models to get more money, like a subscription-based news organization like I work with, or donations like the Independent, or new advertising models, or just ways to work with less money and still create good content. That's been the biggest change across the board. And then there's cultural changes that come with that too, access to politics and businesses. Yeah.
Roger, what about yourself, right? When you look back at all the work that you've done over the years, then you look at just kind of the reality nowadays, what do you see as like some of the big, the money bit, I mean, is bang on, but what do you see?
I was raised on newspapers.
Yeah. I delivered newspapers, right? That was like, that kept me in 1 cent candy and also like whatever else, comic books growing up.
Yes,
I could
Alex
still
and his
feel the
brothers
telegram.
delivered the paper too, but in the household where I grew up, the morning paper was how you started your day.
Yeah. Tell folks about then where you grew up and coming here to the province.
Yeah. I was my childhood home was in Indiana.
Yeah.
A town that was the subject of some sociological studies back in the 20s and then later, called Middletown, so kind of a typical town. But I came of age during Vietnam, and I was part of the resistance, the opposition to it. And after I graduated from university, I took a teaching job, so I was deferred. But it was a difficult time in the States. It was the 60s. And to make a long story short, I came to Canada, immigrated. I was indicted for refusing to be drafted. There was a warrant issued for my arrest. I crossed the border. I applied for land immigrant status. I got it. 5 years later, I walked into the clerk's office at the Supreme Court building in St. John's and took the oath of citizenship. And a couple of years later, the State Department in the U.S. caught up to me and said, "We understand you're a Canadian. I guess that means you don't want to be an American. Let us know otherwise." And I said I was satisfied not to be an American. And Newfoundland's been my home or my return address for a long time now.
So how was that decision holding up all these years later, looking at the political landscape south of the border right now?
I haven't been back for a while. I mean, I got a presidential pardon.
By Carter, right?
Yeah, Carter. So I was able to return and visit family and things like that. But with Trump, I haven't crossed the border for a while. I kind of think my name still might be in a list someplace.
I've heard so much about the war resistors who came here over the years, and so this is part just Alex, what are your thoughts on your dad or just others in the conversation around that from that period and onwards?
Yeah, there were things going into this book that I expected, and then things that surprised me, and that conversation about war resistors and draft dodgers in Canada has become romanticized, I think, over the decades, and there's a lot of mythology around it now too. And while there were a fair few who came to Newfoundland, what I discovered through my research was it was fewer than perhaps people thought. Fewer still that actually stayed. Most who came left after a few years. Some were in Random Island and some were in Musgrave Harbor, but a few in St. John's. But more than that, several names that people who were here for a while kind of became thought of as draft dodgers and war resistors. And they might have been if they were drafted. But in most cases, they were Americans who came here in the late 60s and early 70s and were probably of a certain persuasion. And people just assumed that they might have been draft dodgers over the years. And a lot of names that I came across, people telling me, oh, so-and-so was, in fact, a draft dodger, actually weren't. So it's sometimes a misunderstood subject, and it's not as big of a community in this province as some might think.
Well, I remember I used to have, back when I was at Memorial University in the late 90s, early 2000s, you had some American profs, and I never asked, right? But it was like, oh, they're here because of the war. And it was just like a few of them. And I don't think any of us bothered ever kind of asking because we felt like, oh, maybe you don't ask that. And to the point, like maybe they were, maybe they weren't, but
yeah.
Not
maybe
as
like half of the folklore department in the 70s.
So Vietnam, and you end up in Newfoundland. Tell us about how you got into the public broadcaster with CBC.
I came to Memorial University in 1971, I think,
Yeah.
to do a master's degree in sociology. And I'd been working as a town planner in Halifax, a job I got quite by accident. But it led me down a particular career path. I had met an architect, Bill McCallum, who was from here. And he got me involved in fighting City Hall over the future plans for the city, and they wanted to build high-rises and parking lots downtown and would erect the east end of the residential stuff. So I got involved in that. And 3 years later, I finished my degree, and a producer of the On the Go program approached me and asked me if I wanted to do commentaries about urban affairs or municipal affairs. And I said, sure. And he liked it, and I liked it. And I had wanted to be a journalist when I was a kid. When I graduated from high school, I went to university to become a journalist. And, the career path or your life path just goes, you don't get a chance to decide these things. The line's not straight. And I walked away from the kind of town planning stuff, and I took a job as a researcher on the Go, and a couple of years later, I was running Sunday Morning in Toronto, and I worked with them for 10 years.
It's one of the parts of the book that I really enjoyed. I think for a lot of people, the interest might be Roger's reflections on various important pieces of history, whether that's local or international. But the personal narrative is kind of interesting, too. He was, picking up the newspaper for his father in the morning. He was the editor of his newspaper in his high school. This was like a probable path for a young child, a teenager, really, and then completely deferred by this life-altering decision to leave your country and not know if you could ever come back. And then, not even 10 years later, 8 years after leaving the country, all of a sudden to have that possibility just by almost chance open up again, almost serendipitous. And it was a nice part of the story to write.
Totally, and I love the following the puck of your career of from that to being at Tiananmen Square, doing international reporting, but also working with some the names and the folks here in this province. All of that to me, because of the route and because you say you never know where life takes you. But I think it all kind of. The one thing I do feel even when I look at my career and stuff in journalism, things just build. And sometimes it doesn't make sense at the time. But then all of a sudden you're like, well, I am who I am. And all this kind of helps me for the role that I have or where I might go next. And I think for you, that is such a big thing.
I always thought of journalism as the curiosity business.
Yeah.
And it's a great job if you've got a short attention span.
For those who are easily bored, journalism is great because there's always going to be a different person to talk to, a different subject, something else to dig into, and every day is different and can be different, which is huge. When you tell me about the decision for bringing in crosstalk and a call-in program. See, we're in the it's the Signal now, but it was crosstalk, and before that, Radio Noon crosstalk.
Yeah, the bad old days when radio was down on Duckworth Street.
Yeah.
The program was kind of searching for an identity. Traditionally, the midday programs at CBC across the country were resource-based, like agricultural stuff. And if the fisherman's broadcast, if the broadcast, we know it now, wasn't on at 5:30, it would have been a midday show. And if you're on the mainland, and I was approached by somebody who thought we should be broadcasting town hall kind of meetings because the VOCM open line show dominated the 9 to 12 marketplace. It was huge.
Yeah.
And this person thought, well, CBC should have a piece of this kind of community conversation. But it struck me that we didn't need to have a town hall. We could do it with our radio network. And so we revamped the format and created the call-in feature as a self-help kind of thing, a tool. For those of us who are old enough to remember the Whole Earth catalog, it was like how to take advantage and do things yourselves. So that was sort of the spirit of it, and the models, endures.
Oh yeah, I mean it's stuck, and
there's some variations on it, and you'll improve it, make it different, and groom it, but the core of it's still kind of there.
Well, I think the big bit is you in that time, you're looking at, well, where are we? What serves the audience? Where do we want to go with this? And then also not being unafraid to experiment and try something, to try to serve a mandate to reach folks, and also in this case, you're building community, understanding, empathy, all of that stuff.
I like that idea.
It's nice to remember the ones that worked. Ask me about Jesus of Avalon sometime.
Yeah, well,
the Sunday morning program.
We talk about the ones that didn't work in the book, but that's kind of describing for a reader who might not know the difference between a producer and an executive producer was a bit of the challenge in writing it, right?
Yeah.
One of Dad's jobs was not always to create these new programs, but to facilitate the people who did. Like the trivia component of your show today was, it was somebody else's baby, but he had to foster that.
As Art Rockwood.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the executive producer's role. You're a manager of people, and you foster them and bring those ideas in. So the ideas aren't always your own, like Oil in the Family or some of the other specials. But the executive producer's job is to be unafraid to allow those experiments to play in the sandbox, as it was put by a few people.
Yeah, well, exactly it, right? Because I got brought in here by Peter Gullidge, former executive producer, recently retired, right? And you were brought in. Peter was brought in by you, as he's put it to me. And I think that there's a line of folks and understanding in this building that the essence comes from your allowing folks to play in the sandbox, which is what Gullidge did with some of us, and I still feel that. It's like you got to go out and try and do stuff that's different. And yes, there's going to be stuff that doesn't work.
And I got it from a guy named Dave Cando.
Yes, of course.
When and Toby Fife, who took me off the street, if you will, and said, "You want to switch careers?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us about working with John Doyle, because we've got him lined up here on the line. But just tell us a bit of who John Doyle is and just some of the work.
John was one of the pillars of NIPCO. Independent Filmmakers Co-op. He was one of the founding members. He and I met when I was doing the kind of urban planning stuff. We had hired the Mummers Troupe to do a community theater piece for us. And then we hired John and his brother and his partner to turn into a film, which is at the archive now. Mm-hmm. And John and I collaborated on things and became friends, and friendship endures.
John Doyle's on the line. Hi, John.
Hello, how are you?
Goodbye. How are you doing today?
Very good. Hello, Roger. Hello, Alex. Nice to talk to you.
Hi, John.
So, what are some of your memories of when you first started working? The radio-friendly memories of when you first started working with Roger.
Well, I was thinking as I was waiting to come on that, when Roger and I met, it was kind of a match made in heaven, except I think a lot of people thought it was a match made in the other place. We really hit it off. We both have an anti-authoritarian streak, but I'm not by nature confrontational, and I think Roger would agree that he is. So we probably moderated each other, but he really encouraged me to fly with the ideas and not be afraid to go after anybody. So we started doing these little commentaries. They were, I really don't think you'd hear anything like it on radio today. Not to say that it was fabulous by any means, but that what we were trying to do was, something different, just getting outside of existing formats, trying to have a bit of fun, and particularly going after anyone we thought was worth going after.
Yeah, it strikes me from reading the book and just some of the working here and hearing about stuff over the years. There was a fearlessness, I think, to it, of just like, well, why not try it? Why not do it? Why not poke the bear again and again?
Exactly, and I know, in those days, I'm sure it's the same now. If you're doing something that might be controversial or might be edging on legality, you'd talk to the lawyer in, I believe it was in CBC Ottawa, the head of legal department, and it wasn't long before Roger learned who was the one guy to call. There was one of the lawyers there who was much more broad-minded and willing to stand behind something. So whenever there was a question, that was the guy who got the call, and it kept us from actually being convicted of anything, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, and for lawyers, it's not always, there's a need to get something lawyered, but then it's also knowing the right lawyer just to make sure things are okay.
Exactly.
I think what we figured out was how to create an editorial page cartoon on the radio.
Yeah.
Tell us more.
Well, a newspaper has lots of pieces. There's a front page, and there's news, then there's signed commentaries like a Ray Guy column, and then there's the editorial page, and there's a cartoon that is satire.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's a really good description of it, exactly, yeah.
So if you look at the CBC policy book, I was around when they were writing it. They struggled. How do you regulate satire?
Yeah.
And in the end, the best they could do is to say the audience just needs to know it's satire as opposed to straight goods.
Yeah.
It's a license to do things you otherwise can't do, say things you can't say, and
So,
And in the many times you were threatened with lawsuits or on occasion sued, satire was a defense that helped avoid any conviction.
Exactly,
award
yeah,
against you.
yeah.
so what were the responses to? I mean, other than the threat of lawsuits, but from the public, what were some of the? Because I imagine a range of responses to when this first started being put out.
well, John and Ann, help me with who?
Crosby?
Ann Crosby, thanks, John. They wrote Oil in the Family, which was a daily current affairs soap opera. The writers would start in the morning, and by 5 o'clock, there would be a 7 or 8 minute play on the on-the-go show, and the audience loved it.
So, Oil in the Family, the fact that existed and went across the country blows my mind.
Yeah.
It was an amazing opportunity for a writer, particularly, to be able to, you can imagine the adrenaline that came. You're putting something on the air 5 days a week, recorded on the. Well, it was recorded an hour or so ahead of time, and but essentially live to air, yeah. And you took in. We would have a conference in the morning. What's on the go? What are we going to talk about? I mean, we had a storyline. Oil in the Family was a soap opera with a family that you're following, but of course their lives took directions that suited. They gave us an opportunity to talk about what's going on. I mean, it was early days of oil exploration. It was right in the middle of the abortion debate in Canada. Whatever we could talk about, we found a way to work it into the show. And we were continually encouraged by both Roger and Chris Brooks, who was the immediate producer on it, to push the lines. Like, go ahead, try it, and we'll see how it goes. And in terms of response, the thing is that this was, of course, pre-internet, so response was basically either a phone call or a letter. So you didn't get that sense of immediate response. But we were picking it up on the street, and it just felt it was an opportunity I've never had to repeat it again.
And for the reader, the listener, sorry, that show and the abortion debate that you touched on in it is where this book gets its title, because there was a contempt of court allegation made, and it was hauled before the judge. And anyway, CBC was not convicted in that case, but was declared to be dangerously close.
Yes.
I remember when we heard about that ruling. I mean, I don't want to show that there was any contempt for court, but it was a pretty happy day.
We immediately took it. We immediately took it and used it as in the advertising line, and
that's right.
we turned. Yeah.
And you sent a T-shirt to someone too after this, didn't you?
Yeah, the lawyer for the lawyer who brought the charge, the complaint.
Yeah, CBC, a small CBC T-shirt. I'll just leave that there.
Yeah, it probably wasn't a very nice thing to do.
Yeah, the past. It's all in the past.
Well, you were certainly confrontational and remain so. John might not have had that in his personality, but combined, your content and the shows you created were confrontational as well.
John was delighted to have me.
We did have some really good times together, and I know the whole landscape of media has changed. Radio has probably doesn't have the same prominence as it did then, particularly prior to the internet. But radio is a medium I've always loved. Even though I worked in film, I always found radio to be very, very satisfying, because it's the means of achieving it are so easy. I mean, you want to make a film, you got to have trucks and crew and people in unions, And radio, you just kind of you create the world in a couple of words, and the means to produce it are very simple and direct. So it's much less expensive, and it makes it easier, I think, to experiment.
Yeah, and it can just be so. And this is my bias showing here, but I mean, it can be so intimate with radio. And you're right on the easy bit. Making TV takes so long. And like, for example, I've got an interview to do after the show today. I will go down to the harbor to do said interview. It will take me 15 to 20 minutes, and then I will come back. If it was TV, it would take double or triple the time. He's like, oh, let's do that again. Let's do that again. Turn around, walk again, and all that stuff.
Do you remember Ron Pumphrey?
Yeah.
He hosted the VOCM open line show for years. He told me one time the difference between radio and TV. He said, in television, they can show you pictures of the moon. Yeah. I can turn it into green cheese.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And today, radio is kind of entering, I don't know if I would call it a golden age, but a new age thanks to podcasts where people consume it at their leisure and are consuming it more. And,
that's true.
You're still trying to provide live air radio like we're doing today. But thanks to podcasts, people are kind of tuning in a different way. And I think more people are listening to audio programming solely and mixing that with TV
and so I think now we're at it. And John, I want your thoughts on this as well. As we're talking, I think there is this bit of a time of trying to, like it was back then, in a way, albeit as we've talked about, money is different in the media ecosystem now compared to back then. There is a time of trying to reach out and figure out how do we get to people in this different way with a different style, even though, like, in my mind, podcasting is still just radio, but at the same time, it's different radio, right? Like, it's not exactly the same. John, what about yourself?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I shouldn't have said that about radio.
No, I don't think you're wrong on it. I just think there's more nuance that we can get to.
Yeah, and again, the means to create podcasts are really, really minimal. You don't even need a transmitter, thanks to the internet. So yeah, it's I guess a democratization of radio making, and that's a very good thing.
Yeah, well, and everything that can come with that. If you look at the podcast landscape and all the different voices. Any other thoughts, John, before we let you go, just on the book or working with Roger back in the day, or just anything else?
Well, I think it was a great idea to create the book, and I remember when Alex interviewed me, I kept thinking, like, man, this is so strange to be talking to a guy about his father while the said person is still alive. A lot of biographies are posthumous, so I really commend Alex for what he's done. It's a great read, and I'm glad that Roger agreed to do it and to let him have free reign.
I have one for John before he goes.
Yeah, sure.
John, what was friction with the Catholic Church like in media 40 years ago compared to today? Because I think that's something that people don't understand the same way.
That's true. Especially like somewhere like Newfoundland, and the people used to call the CBC the Catholic Boys Club, because a lot of the people working on it, for some reason, I don't know, I guess it goes back to a number of years, probably before Confederation, that a lot of Catholics got hired. And there was, of course, religious divisions. People went to denominational schools, so you might grow up in half the town you never met in your life, because you were always hanging around with other Catholics. So when we got out there and started going after the church, not because it was the church, but because they were being, we felt, unreasonable, trying to dominate the social system, trying to have their way, about things, and it was certainly not well received by some of the upper management at CBC, that's for sure.
What did it feel like for both of you? What did it feel like then, as you, whether it's the satire or the other bits of coverage around it, especially once we move up through Mount Cashel and everything that meant, but as you were doing that poking and that coverage and everything else, what was it like to have been in the seats of deciding we're going there, we're making these decisions?
In addition to having a bit of fun, there was a lot of serious work going on.
Yeah.
I covered the Catholic priest child sexual abuse story for years. Jim Hickey, one of the first priests to be convicted, had been running the HR department at CBC at one point. Then Mount Cashel happened. and my partner Deanne Fleet, that was her story in television. So there was a lot of hard, straight work being done. There's opportunities for satire and stuff. That's all true, but there was a lot of serious work being done.
Yeah.
John and I did some stuff that had nothing to do with the Catholic Church. We did a documentary I'm still proud of, and that was called Lies and Evermore Lies, the IWA Strike Remembered.
Oh, right.
It was on the occasion, Land and Ladd, who had organized the IWA strike. For people who don't recall, it was like the first time small with sort of labor credentials were wrecked. And there was a strike, a logger strike, and then there was a member of the RNC who was killed in a demonstration. But a serious historic event.
Yeah.
And Land and Ladd had come to St. John's at the invitation of somebody at the university. And he'd done a public address, and I went, geez, this guy's remarkable. So I was the executive producer, and I had my own program budget, and I decided I was going to do a story about it. So I went to visit him at his home in Ontario. And then John and I dug the archives, and John did a lot of work on it. And we produced a documentary. We ended up mixing it at the Advanced Production Studio in Toronto, and it's visual. It's one of those radio documentaries with pictures in it, the old archival news story, and it's in the archives as well. So it's funny. I talked to a political scientist who said that his students who would read about the IWA strike and his students who would listen to the documentary came away with different.
Wow.
Yeah. So in addition to like having fun,
Yeah.
there's a lot of serious work that went on.
But that's the range that I love about what you can sometimes get to do, in especially like on the broadcast side of things. Like it's range, right? It's like, well, we can poke fun and be a bit saucy, and we can also do just the most serious, important, kicking down doors, accountability journalism. And sometimes there's Christian crossover depending on what it is. John, any final thoughts before I let you go?
No, great to talk to you about this today, and brings back a lot of memories, I got to say. Thanks.
Thanks for coming on the program, John.
John.
Bell, folks.
Hi, John.
And we're giving away a book. And I'll remind me to ask you both to sign up before you go. I'm sure there's a pen around here somewhere. The signal at cbc.ca. Give us an email like you did earlier in the week if you would like to be put in for the running for the draw of the book, which we'll do at the end of the show. And, if you want to chat with anyone here, or if you've got thoughts on some of what we are talking about, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. The text line is open, 709-327-8206. Tiananmen Square.
Yep.
What was that like to be there?
It was a surprise because I didn't go over there to do.
No, you were doing
Tiananmen
another
Square.
story,
Yeah. What had happened was I was working with Sunday Morning, living in St. John's, but I was working for Sunday Morning as a field producer. And Mikhail Gorbachev, glasnost, all the perestroika, the opening up of the Soviet Union, was going to China to see Deng Xiaoping. So these two communist giants finally are meeting. There's this historic rapprochement, and Sunday Morning decided that our listeners would like to know what led up to this historic moment. So I went over with another fellow to do a story about what has changed in China. This brought us to this moment.
Yeah.
The idea being on the eve of Gorbachev's arrival, Sunday Morning listeners would get a background story. Like the difference between news and current affairs at CBC is like the difference between the news and a newspaper and a magazine.
Yeah. It's like the New York Times and the New York Times Magazine.
Absolutely. So Sunday Morning was like the New York Times Magazine, and we wanted to do a story about here's the China that's changed. So we I fly to Toronto, overnight in Toronto, fly to Beijing, crash, and then we go to meet our hosts because you couldn't just go to China.
No.
You had to have a host.
Yeah.
And it was Radio Beijing. And so they were making money, and they decided we would have a dinner together to meet. And on the way to dinner, a cab drove by Tiananmen Square, and there were all these kids in the square, and they were standing up on top. I said, "What's going on?" And they said, "Well, Hu Yaobang, the premier, had died, and he was a he was a moderate, he was a reformer, and the kids had come to the square to kind of honor that. And anyways, so we had dinner, and after dinner I said, "Take me back to the square," and that was the beginning. So we tore up the plan, and we started recording this moment. And then the trick was how we're going to get a story back to Canada.
Yeah.
And we used to, Sunday morning you would look for pigeons. We called them pigeons, people who were flying. And you would ask them to take a cassette tape for you. And it was literally how you'd get it. You do it, right? Otherwise you're going to do something over a telephone line. Anyway, so we recorded in the square that night, and we recorded the square again the next day, and to talk to people about what's happening. And found a pigeon, and the tape got back to Toronto, and then we tore up the plan, and then we were 3 weeks later we left and came back and did our stories, because then it was a news story.
Yeah, then it's the Chinese government has crushed dissent. People are missing. Folks, if you're young and you don't know this, Google Tank Man. It's one of the most famous pictures of all time.
The night before the funeral, the military said the square has to be cleared. So I put on my running shoes and my knee brace. It might be one of those nights. Yeah. And sunrise came, and the flag was raised over the Forbidden City, and the crowd cheered because that meant that the Army's not coming. They won. They faced them down. Now the Army did eventually come after Gorbachev's visit.
Yeah, it was a reminder when I was doing this book just how long that period was. It wasn't just a couple of days. It was
several
couple
weeks.
Months, and it got dark in a hurry. Not as much of a hurry as maybe people remember, but it evolved over time.
It was a wild story. I mean, there was like no sleep. You're just working straight through. It was like you realized, and the international media wasn't there. Like they were there within 36 hours. They came back in a big hurry. But it was a wild time.
We're talking about the book Dangerously Close to Contempt, The Restless Life of Roger Bill, Journalism's Unrepentant Agitator, written by Alex Bill, also a journalist, and his son. Both of them are here with me right now. We've got an email from Jeff Meeker. Thanks for the email, Jeff. A discussion about Roger's career is not complete without mentioning his fantastic and fearless work with The Current, an alternative newspaper he published with Mark Smith. You guys were always stirring things up and pissing people off. I remember criminal charges involving a printer for which you were found guilty, but the case promptly dismissed by the judge. Even your series highlighting the most expensive real estate in the province irritated some rich folks. I wonder if Roger has any memories from that era which stand out. Memories of when you were making everyone angry, Roger.
Not everybody was angry. It was a very popular publication. Some people were angry.
And a lot of times it's the right people are a little bit angry, if you're poking at things.
Yeah. This was after I left CBC. And I didn't stop working as a journalist. When I left CBC, I went to work with the Cable Public Affairs Channel. Started working on the television side of thing, and then got into internet video production. We were way ahead of the market on it. And I had a nice run at that, working with Ray Fenley and Tristan Clark. And it also took me back on the road. We did a nice bit of international work. But anyways, I found myself going back, and Current was a little alternative weekly, I think it was every couple of weeks in St. John. And Mark Smith was an excellent graphics guy and an advertising guy, and he had a sense of humor, and it was a good run. And yeah, we would get threatening letters from lawyers, and we'd immediately publish them. We thought hilarious.
Greatly disappointed I can't do that in my job.
And the story Jeff is telling is we got kind of away from publishing a newspaper, and did some remessaging of a candidate's campaign signs in a municipal election. And my partner, Mark Smith, got charged with mischief. Anyways.
That was the one time you were convicted for something you did, even though it was Mark who was convicted and not you. Suspended sentence.
I still like, there was a great cover we did and that was during the municipal elections in St. John's. And Andy Wells, who had a reputation being loud.
Yeah, yeah. And a few other things, but yeah, loud's one of them.
He was loud. Yeah, big mouth guy, loud mouth guy. Greg Locke, excellent photojournalist. I've worked off and on with Greg for a long time at St. John's. He persuaded Andy to wear a ball gag. So we went to a sex shop and got a BDSM, a bondage and domination ball gag, and put it on. And Greg he snapped like 3 or 4 pictures. That's all they got. And we turned it into a cover of Current. It's classic. It's great.
You just gave me a memory because I've seen that. At some point in my life, I've seen that picture. I don't know the context of it, when and where and how, but I do remember that.
I mean, in the annals of election coverage, municipal election coverage, it deserves a piece, a little footnote or something like that.
Oh yeah.
But we were just kind of like thinking out loud and having fun.
Yeah.
But we're also doing serious stories, and
Yeah, and like I said, yeah, it's the range, right? Like you want to, you're doing the reporting, and then it's like, you don't want to be kind of funny for you. Oh, let's try that. That'll be kind of, it's something to do, because it does make an impact, right? Like it does make an imprint, and there's different ways that you can do that. Terry Riley is on the line. Hi,
Hello there.
how you doing?
Okay, Roger Bill, how are you doing?
good, Terry. How you doing? Are you growing old gracefully?
I wouldn't say gracefully. I'm just growing old, but I'm trying to be somewhat graceful about it. But so is it your son wrote the book, right?
Yeah, that was me.
But your son, you're there too, are you?
Yeah, they're both here. Yeah, Alex and Roger both here.
Well, yeah, I think I met your son originally, Roger, over the fence at John Doyle's house.
That was another son, but that's
Okay.
that's a memorable night.
Yeah, it's a memorable night. I was saying to the person I just talked to on the phone who was taking my call, I said, I'm not sure we can go to every story that we share, but it was a memorable night for sure. But I'm so delighted that there's a book out. Well, we're looking for it for sure. And because you and John were a significant part of my lives and part of the life of our province. I mean, both of you. And it was an honor to be have both of you, and now your author's son as part of my memories. And because I've been here, I came here for a visit, as you may know, and that was 55 years ago. So,
how's the teddy bear picnic? Do you still do it?
Well, I had someone call me up and ask me if I was still doing it. And I said, well, I used to do all the organizing. When the Arts and Culture Center gave it up, I used to do all the organizing for it. And then this person called me back about half an hour later and said, we wanted to do the 48th, 49th, and 50th Teddy Bears Picnic. I said, well, let's work on the 48th. So we did the 48th at the local dinosaur park, and it had a couple thousand people. It was. My heart's still willing. My body says, slow down, Terry. You're 76 years old. But that I'm sure you could get that. Your body probably talks to you sometimes that way too, Roger.
Yeah, I'm at the point in my life where I listen to my body too.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm really bad at listening to my body. But sometimes if it yells in my ear or yells through a certain new ache, I say, oh, okay. In fact, actually, I ended up in the hospital after a couple of falls earlier in the year. But life is great, and it really made my day and sparked my love for this place I've made as my home for over half a century now. So go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just letting you clue up.
No, I just and your host there is he knows we've chatted a few times too, but
yeah.
I'm still going. I still composing. I tell people I have OCD, obsessive composing disorder. Anyway, I won't keep you because I'm sure there's more intriguing and interesting calls. But great to hear you and welcome home and. Hopefully our paths will cross.
Nice to hear from you again, Terry.
Thanks, Terry.
Okay, see you, buddy.
And easy stepping, buddy. Terry Riley there, the one and only. Here's a text. Yeah, there's folks who want this book, by the way. I keep seeing my phone ding, and it's like book draw. And this one is so happy listening to the Signal today. Roger Bill is legendary. Would love to read his biography. So I didn't see it texted
you can
there.
get it in
Alex
local
under the
bookstores.
table.
Chapters, Coles,
Everywhere, yeah.
down home.
Wherever you find your books.
Yeah. I know the story of which Terry was referring to, and it was a good time to thank my mother for her patience because you got to lift a lot of rocks, and I tried to find the right balance, and there's no way I could have done this if I didn't have journalists for parents who kind of understood what it's all about.
Yeah. We got another caller on the line. Pat Barron's calling from Topsail. Hi, Pat.
Hello, Adam. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
I'm not too bad, thanks. Listening to your story. I'm a little nervous, which is really, if anybody knows me out there, they know that I don't usually get nervous. But anyway, we're going to go back to 1991.
Yeah.
It's the 100-year anniversary of the Victorinox Swiss Army knife. Peter Zosky is interviewing Fred Brokenshire. Peter knows that Fred always had a Swiss Army knife on him. So they're chatting away about the 100th anniversary, and towards the end of the interview, Zosky says to Brokenshire, if you could improve the Swiss Army knife, how would you do it, Fred? And Fred said, listen. I want you to listen. Did you hear that?
Yeah, I heard it, yeah.
Fred and Zosky were both smokers. And Fred opened up a Zippo lighter, a stainless steel Zippo lighter. You could hear the clink and then of firing up the lighter. And, that's my story. It was really cool at the time. Smoking is passé now, but the two boys had a great laugh, and that's my tale.
Oh, thanks for phoning with that.
Anyway,
I love a media memory.
It is, yeah. It's and it's about two great guys in that world. You got a second for the Swiss Army knife? I can tell you another quick story.
Sure. Yeah. We got a minute. Yeah.
I was on the way back from overseas a few years back. I was working over there, and I ended up coming through Switzerland and stopping in Zurich at the airport, and got through the checkouts and security and everything, and I'm waiting for my flight, and there's a Swiss Army store there, and I went in. I'm a Swiss Army knife guy too, so I go in and I buy like a couple of knives and whatever, a shirt or something. And I go back out. I'm sitting down with my little bag of goodies, including 3 or 4 knives. And I start walking towards the checkout where I'm going to get on the plane. And I went, oh, I have knives. How am I getting on the plane?
Yeah.
But I brought them inside security. Anyway, I went in, and it was okay. And it's not that long ago. She said, oh, no, you can take your knives. I actually gave them to her. And I said, you hang on to them, and I'll get them when I get off the plane. Anyway, quick story. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I
Great
appreciate
show.
the call. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I like media. You never know what kind of a media bit from when listening to radio is going to stick with you all these years. We just had a text come in too, wanting to ask you about the documentary, The Last Newfoundlander, to ride with Jesse James.
When I came to the finish of my career at CBC, I got a lot of pleasure from doing my own stories. I was the executive producer of Radio Current Affairs for the province, so I would look after that part of the job, but I carved off some money for myself. And I did a piece about Al Pittman, poet, and he told me a story about when he was a kid and he shot a neighbor girl with his BB gun or something like that in Cowboys. And I called the documentary "The Last Newfoundlander to Ride with Jesse James."
Cool.
And like some of those pieces are, there's in the archives. I took a big bag of my personal stuff to the archives and to the Center for Newfoundland Studies. Interviews with people and documentaries like that I don't know what's happened to the CBC archives. I don't believe they're in Newfoundland anymore.
Everything's been digitized.
It's been digitized. Oh, good. But that was one of the last documentaries I did. And Al had passed away, and he was a trip guy. He created the what was the name of the poetry festival out in Cornerburg? He did. Will it come back? Anyways, he was a terrific guy. But that was the documentary.
This just seems like a nice place to plug the Center for Newfoundland Studies and the archives and special collections at Memorial, because they were a real resource doing this book. There was boxes and boxes from the Community Planning Association of Canada that I got to comb through. And, most of the book comes from dozens and dozens of interviews with people. But, you're relying on people's memories, right? And so I had different stories about how the LSPU Hall came to be a theater from a union hall. And but by kind of going through the archives, I managed to dig out some old lawyers' letters from the 70s that kind of helped put the time frame in perspective and how one organization, the Community Planning Association, started that process, and then the Mummers Troupe kind of took it over and kind of made it their home. And that's a piece of history that is important, because the LSPU Hall is important here, and it's not in many books or other places you can find.
There was, back in the 70s, the town planning piece was important in terms of how it changed St. John's. But people like Shanny Duff and Miller Eyre and Shane O'Day, they end up getting the rules of the game changed and the planning stuff changed. But the Community Planning Association had a contract to organize people in the East End for a particular federal program. We needed a place to work. Herb Davis, who had worked at the Extension Service, had looked at the LSPU Hall as a place to get married. And he said, "Hey, Roger, I know a place that might work for the CPAC." And he showed me the hall, and I said, "Perfect." And we made a deal to rent the hall from the union. And then we hired the Mummers Troupe to do this play that John Doyle did the film. And then one conversation led to another, and is Codco interested? Maybe we should try to buy this thing. And Mummers didn't have any money, but we did. CPAC did. And we were getting ready to wind it up. And Adrian Fowler was part of that, and Strat Canning was part of it. And what we did with the Mummers, they had a deal with Canada Council. If they could raise money, Canada Council would match it. So we took our money, and we took a 3-year lease and paid them up front. They took that and got matching money, and that's where the down payment came from for the purchase of the hall.
Which remains a theater today.
Yeah. We only have like 2 minutes left, but time and place for journalism, right? So around for the creation of the LSPU Hall, for what it is today, Tiananmen Square, the Gulf War, doing documentaries that you've done, making decisions around changing, programming real estate for CBC. Like, what's a parting thought on just what it's meant to be in these places for history over the years?
I guess that's why you're drawn to journalism. But as you were describing it, my thought was, thank you, Deanne. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. I'm sorry the chimney caught fire when I was gone. Because Deanne was working at CBC Television doing important and hard work.
Yeah, churning out the best work.
Raising 3 boys. Yeah. And I'm off,
You're in Riyadh or wherever, right?
Yeah. It was, that's what comes to my mind.
Yeah. Alex, final thoughts?
Yeah, it's nice to see that there was this narrative thread throughout. Jeff called about Current, and I think it's fun to note that Dad was doing Current in his 60s. He's still writing in his 80s and being a little bit of an agitator now. And so there's a narrative here of somebody who kind of pushes back, whether it's Vietnam, whether it's CBC establishment, whether it's the Newfoundland establishment when he was doing Current for, more than half a century, and I hope people enjoy that when they buy the book and read it.
And we need agitators, right?
We do.
We do. I mean, this is how things are set up, and we need people to poke and to make us think and to assess where we are, what we're doing, where we're going. So thanks, boys, for coming.
Go get them. Go get them.
Go get them. Go get them. And Michael Boyle, congratulations. We're going to send you the book. Arlette will be in touch. Arlette Lazarenko, associate producer for the show. That is it for today. Thoughts on the show, The Signal at cbc.ca. Tomorrow on the show, we are talking about diabetes. This province has the highest rate of diabetes in the country. We will talk with people living with it, folks whose loved ones have it, doctors treating folks, and also people studying it. Big old show tomorrow, all about diabetes. Don't miss it. Cheers.